Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna look at how to reverse a linked list. It's one of the most, maybe the most popular problems like on LeetCode. I think it's been solved by 2.5 million people so far, which is insane. So today I'm going to walk you through each and every step of how to reverse a linked list properly. If you've been struggling with it, this is going to be really helpful for you. Right? So let's first go and understand how it works and what we do before we come here and code it up and make it run, right? So let's go to the compiler, to the whiteboard, and we will be given these set of nodes, right? So what we have to do is we have to convert this into this. Basically, have to make the 4 point to 3 and 3 point to 2 and 2 point to 1, and then the first element in this case point to null, right? So because it's gonna point to null, the last element always points to null. So yeah, we gotta make sure we do that. Now, how we achieve that, right? So we're gonna have a few pointers for that. Basically, we're gonna use two nodes. The first one is gonna be to traverse the linked list, and it's pretty basic because if you have ever traversed a linked list, you know that we initialize a temp node that points to head initially, and then we do like temp unless and unless temp hits null, we increment temp and we traverse temp by temp equals temp dot next, right? So that's how we traverse to the linked list. And we're going to use that to traverse to the linked list, and then we're going to have a previous node to set up, previous node, and we're going to keep track of all the previous nodes that we come across, right? So first, initially it's going to be set to null because you'll see why we do this, because we'll need this, and we're going to make the current element point to the previous element, because what's our main motive is to, while we iterate through this linked list, we're going to make sure that we change the pointer. So let's say we're at 1, we're going to change the one's pointer to null because it's the previous. So the previous is going to point to null at first. Then we're going to come to 2, and we're going to change the pointer of 2 to 1, which is going to be the previous element of 2. Then we're going to come to 3, then we're going to do this, and again until we have this, right? So we basically have this now. You see, 4, 3, 2, 1, and null. Same thing. So we're going to do that as we're iterating through the loop. So it must be really, the picture should be clear in your mind, right? What we're going to do. So for that, we will need to set the previous element somewhere so we can access it. And also, so we're also going to initialize a temp variable inside the loop. You can also do it outside, but a lot of people do it outside. We're going to do it inside in this video, and we will see what we do, but we're going to utilize that to make sure we don't lose the next element of the current element, right? So the originally next element, because obviously we're going to make the previous element that we're going to store the next element of this, right? Or like the previous element we're going to make, so the previous element is 1 and the current element is 2, so we're going to point the next of 2 to 1, right? But the next of 2 is initially 3. We will have no chance of going to 3 if we just lose the connection to 3, right? So we're going to make sure we have some connection to 3, and we're going to store it in a safe place before we actually change the connections, and we pointed to previous, right? So let's come back to our code compiler of linked list, and let's make it super clear, right? So first we're just gonna check for some conditions. If head equals to null, or if head.next equals to null, so that just means it has only one element. We're not gonna bother with that, so we're just gonna return head, right? So that's where we're gonna take care of that. And if not, then we're gonna do some stuff. So remember that we initialized the runner variable or the temp to traverse through the whole linked list. Yeah, we're gonna initialize that right now. So let's call it, we can call it list node, we can call it a runner, or to make it simple, let's call it current, right? Or CUR, because it will be pointed to head. So we're going to start from the head. So the current will be head right now. And then we're going to also initialize the previous node, which is going to be called previous, and it's going to point to null. It's going to have the null value right now. You're going to see why we start with null. And then we're going to just have a while loop. So while current, so we're using this current node to traverse, right? So I'm explaining it as I'm assuming that you don't know much about traversing through the linked list as well. So I'm explaining it for beginners, right? So if you know this stuff, just feel free to skip a little bit or fast forward this video. So while current is not equals to null, we're gonna do some stuff, right? We're also gonna increment current, obviously, but we're gonna change the pointers to current and sorts of stuff. So remember that we said that we need the connection of the originally next pointed element, right? So we're starting from 1, and 1 is saying, hey, I'm pointing to 2 right now. So what do you want to do with that? So obviously we need to traverse back to 2, because if we change the connection of 1 to the previous element, which is right now null, so see, 1 is pointing to null, so that's why we need it to be null at first, right? So it's gonna be like, hey dude, I'm pointing to 2, and what are you gonna do with 2 now? So we're gonna store 2 in a safe place. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna initialize a node, right? So let's call it next, because it's gonna be simple, because we're actually storing the next element of the current element. So it's gonna be current.next. So let's understand it once again what we did. So our current element right now is 1, and 1 is pointing to 2, which is the next element. Now we don't want to lose 2, so we're basically taking 2. We're taking this 2 and we're putting it in the next variable, right? Next. And that's what we're doing. And so we put this in the next. Now what we're going to do is we're going to point the current element to the previous element. So current.next equals prev. All right, what we did this to basically, as we said, we're going to keep on changing the pointers as we go on traversing the array. So this is going to be changed. I mean, this is going to point now to null, right? Because null is the current previous. We start with null. Now we're going to change the previous, because if we go to 2 now, and 2 cannot point to null, right? Because it's got to point to 1, because 1 is the previous of 2. So we have to change the previous, and you probably would have guessed it by now. And we're going to change the previous, and we're going to make it to the current node, right? Because 1 is the current node, and we got to make the previous the current node. So 1 is like, hey, now I'm the previous node, right? Because the other elements that are next to me, they're going to use me as a reference and point to me, right? So yeah, that's what's happening. Now we have this next, and we gotta use this next somehow, right? So remember that we have to traverse through the whole list. So how we do that? So we're at 1, and we've done pointing this to its previous node, and we've also changed the previous to the current node. What's left now? The only left part is to traverse through the array. I mean, not the array, the linked list. How we do that? So we have this stored in next. You probably would have guessed it already by now. We just change the current to this now. So current equals next. Pretty simple. And then at the end, you'll realize that we have to return previous. Why? You realize that at the end, when we're done traversing the whole linked list, the previous is going to be here, and it's going to point to this. And by this, we can just by now it would have been like this, right? Because, okay, I'm just gonna show you how it'll go. So let's go through the whole stuff. So this is pretty easy to understand, because we start with null as previous. Now 1 is pointing to null, and then previous has changed to 1. Then 2 is saved in next. Then we come to 2, right? Now 2 will be going through the same process. So the next up 2, which is 3, is going to be saved somewhere, right? Now 2 is going to point here, and the previous is going to change to 2, and now the current node will come to 3. Same thing, 3, then 4 is going to be stored somewhere, 3 is going to be pointing to 2, the previous will become 3, and the current node will traverse to 4, and the same thing and now previous. Now you'll realize that 4 becomes the prev, right? Because at the end, because we make the current as previous. Now, so this we're just going to return the previous to get the whole linked list, right? Return previous. So pretty simple. It should work now. Let's try to run it, and it's, I don't know why it's taking some time, and as you can tell, it's working. Let's try to submit it, and it works. So that was it, guys. That was how to reverse linked list. It's a pretty easy problem to do. If you're new to this, it might be a little bit tricky, but it's overall it's pretty simple. So if you like this video, please share this video with your friends, leave a comment, and don't forget to like this video, right? So see you next. Have a good day.